During the heights of the COVID-19 pandemic, the police in St. James, Jamaica responded to an emergency call, leading them to what should have been a normal church service during the island's curfew hours, to something barbaric one could only imagine were acts of biblical times. But before we dive into this thrilling story, welcome to Tell the Tales, where we resurrect dying stories across the world. If you are a fan of these types of contents, please like, but as usual, do it in such a way to make the like button relive its tale. Let's continue. On the quiet Sunday night of October 17, 2021, the Jamaican police, upon visiting the St. James Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries, encountered a standoff of gunshots in the churchyard while the service was taking place. After the gun battle was won by the police and the shooter was neutralized, what was to be a mass ritual of death was ceased. And when officers entered the church, dead bodies lay in pool of blood. Injured people were looking at fright and nursing wounds. Destruction of church items and shatters of glass spread through the room of what was described as a religious shock by many attendees and security force. But what had led to these events? The church was led by Pastor Kevin O. Smith, who also considered himself to be a prophet of nations. Not much is known about his upbringing, but he was born and raised in Glengough, St. Catherine, then migrated to Canada for most of his teenage life. He was educated in the Canadian school system, where he achieved many qualifications and training, including technical psychotherapy, and traveled to many countries, allowing him to gain regional recognition and respect by the age of 30. Smith was well known in the upper society of Jamaica, often seen in photos with celebrities and politicians. But the self-proclaimed prophet was on a horse too high in the spiritual realm. His plans for his followers would make the day of October 17, 2021, one that Jamaicans home and abroad would want to delete from their memories. But the signs were showing, and the followers were ignoring them all. So 2 weeks before the day of the ritual incident, Smith started to act strange. Although he was a pastor of charisma and theatrics, his messages were usually of substance many Christians would hear at any church in the country. Usual practices such as baptisms, marriages, and regular praise and worship would take place, but his words and actions were constantly changing. By this time, Smith would be telling his church members that the real God was Haile Selassie, that they could now listen popular reggae and dancehall music, smoke marijuana. He even expressed that people who took the COVID-19 vaccine and attended the church would be thrown out. Something was not right with the self-proclaimed prophet, but his church kept on riding the waves. People were so loyal to the pastor, everything he uttered from his mouth was gospel to them. It was even said that they addressed Smith by the titles such as His Majesty, His Excellency, Daddy, and Father. He was God to them. It was now hours leading to the event. Smith had informed his followers that a great flood would come, and the trumpet is sounding. He told them that animals are now entering the ark. He told his followers that they were being prepared to board an ark, and that those who were considered unclean would have their blood shed. Congregants was to be dressed in white. Attendees leave cell phones at home. They should sell their properties and assets, as those won't be needed when they are saved. A list of instructions were commanded, and many had fallen weak and obeyed. On the day of the ritual, Smith was noticed repeating, "I am God in flesh. Come in the ark before it closes. I am God in flesh. Come in the ark before it closes." He had a list of names of all the church members, and while they gathered to enter the church, the quote-unquote ark, he would call them by names, and upon arriving in the building, the members would sign 999 beside his or her name, which Smith would then co-sign 999 next to the individual's name. The charismatic pastor was covered by darkness, a cloud so dark his followers were blinded by it. There was a total of 144 members in church that night. In the church, or what Smith would call the ark, there was a line of naked men and animals waiting to be sacrificed. Smith had assigned 3 main men in his sacrificial army: Kevin Palmer, who would do all the dirty work, a witness whose name was withheld that Smith called the archangel Michael. We'll refer to him as Michael. Smith had named him after the angel that casted out Satan from heaven. And the third, Andrew Ruddock, that he called the archangel Gabriel. He was named after the guardian angel of God. Both were responsible for carrying out sacrificial acts based on orders given by Smith. Smith instructed members to throw out all toilet papers, sanitary wipes, and soaps. But while these items were being gathered, a wine fell and smashed on the floor. Smith uttered to Kevin Palmer, "Cut the throats of those sitting close to where the wine broke, so they could enter the kingdom." However, unfortunately, Michael, the archangel chosen by Smith, was the one immediately next to the broken bottle, and so he was the one to be sacrificed. But Michael smartly moved away to a safe side of the group, which then shifted the attention to another male member. That man then went and he knelt right before Smith. The pastor then said, "If you want to enter the kingdom, your throat would have to be cut." And at that time, a knife was handed to Palmer, who was about to approach the man on his bending knees. The man then jumped and ran outside, where another person joined him, running off furiously. Then Palmer with the knife chased after them, stabbing them both in the back. The others got so petrified with the wild events that were now taking place in the church. There were whispers of fear beneath the silence of occupants in the room. The injured were now moaning in pain. Smith got so outraged he started to smash windows and glasses on the altar, along with other items. Members then laid flat on the floor, covering themselves in fear. Another member of the church, whose name was Michael Brown, had a serious health condition that would have required him to use tubes that connected to vital organs and systems in his body to function normal to some extent. Smith, being in a state of atrocity, looked at Brown and said, "You have to die, but you will rise again." He then asked, "Do you believe I am the resurrection and the light?" Smith then proceeded to pull the tubes from the sick member, allowing blood to gush out from his vital organ. Brown would eventually bleed to death minutes after. But the pastor's bloodletting was just getting started. Tanika Gardner, who was introduced to the church by her aunt, had become a very faithful member of the church, and that faith and belief in her pastor eventually took her to the grave, literally. Tanika was approached by Smith. He asked the same question he asked Michael earlier. "Do you believe in the resurrection and the light?" Tanika nervously uttered, "Yes, I do." Smith followed up asking, "Do you believe I can raise you from the dead?" She responded, "Yes," to which Smith responded, "Your blood has to be cleansed. I will have to cut your throat." She then responded, "Yes." Smith then instructed Michael to carry out the act, in which Michael was too scared and he refused the order from Smith. However, Andre Ruddock, the other soldier chosen by Smith, walked over to the young lady, where she knelt right before him. He then used a knife and slit her throat with no hesitation. Tanika didn't even make a sound. All you could hear was the gurgling sound of blood filling her airway. She then bled to death. Smith had even instructed Ruddock to completely decapitate her because, according to the pastor, she was a goat. But Ruddock did not carry out the extreme act. By this time, there would have been 2 dead bodies in the church, that of Michael Browns and Tanika Gardner's, and a few injured members. This is when the police team acted on intelligence had reached the churchyard and was greeted with gunfire. Kevin Palmer, who had stabbed the 2 members in the back earlier, was the one behind the shooting, and after a confrontation with the police, Palmer was shot dead, apparently running out of bullets, and was now charging at the law enforcers with what appeared to be a cutting object. Smith even tried to cut the throats of 2 more members himself during the final moments of the ordeal, but luckily the police acted promptly and were able to save the wounded members. Smith was arrested along with 41 of his members, including Ruddock, who had killed Tanika. But the mystery was not yet over. Smith was to be charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of wounding with intent, and illegal possession of firearm. The authorities were even looking into possible child sexual abuse charges, as by this time a lot of information was being floating around in the air about the mysterious pastor. He was to be transported to Kingston to appear before the Home Circuit Court on Tuesday, October 26 in that same year. However, on Monday, October 25, 2021, while on his way to Kingston from St. James, the pastor was in a police convoy. Smith was in one of the vehicles along with 3 police officers, while Ruddock was also in another vehicle in that convoy, as he was also set to face charges. While on the Bogwalk bypass in St. Catherine, the parish Smith was born, a white Ford Ranger pickup slammed into the police vehicle in which Smith was traveling. After the collision, firefighters came on scene and helped the victims of the crash. Smith and 3 police officers were then taken to hospital, where Smith was pronounced dead. One of the police officers, Orlando Irons, who was attached to the St. James Division, had also succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead. As for the driver of the pickup that collided with the police vehicle, the person was not identified or mentioned up to this day, letting Jamaicans more believing it was a coordinated accident by higher members of society. Many even believe that the controversial pastor was not dead and the accident was a plot to let him evade charges and withhold valuable information about the sacrificial activities. Some even say he is now in another country with a different identity. The ones that believe he was dead were awaiting for his resurrection. But despite all the conspiracy theories, Pastor Kevin Smith and Constable Irons both died from multiple blunt force injuries after autopsies were carried out. And what was known is that Smith did not get to fulfill whatever devilish plan he had in mind that night. The burial of the pastor remained very secretive, with little or no information given about the body being laid to rest. As for Ruddock, a psychiatric evaluation was done on the accused and he was later charged for the murder, of Tanika Gardner. Michael, however, was just questioned by the police and labeled as a witness as he did not carry out the activities ordered by Smith.